Paul's Mod area, down into this little back lake mouth cut, all the way out to the point, down toward Allen's Bight. Again, this is another one of the areas that's got lots of grass that's on it. Some areas are a little bit more scattered than others, but you can locate some grass that's in these. When you have enough water available to you, you've got little cut-throughs that come off the main shore here on the St. Joe shoreline that you can walk back up into some of these back lake areas, whether it be down in here, and you can find a little deeper pockets and deeper access points. Our water kind of dropped out on us there for a little bit with this big moon in place, so it was something you had to contend with. So it's not always going to be great when that takes place. So what you have to be able to do is locate areas where you've got bait working, and you have to be extremely patient during these time frames when that takes place, when the bite's not super great, big moon in place, high pressure in place, whatever it may be, big strong winds, whether it be storms coming, going, been here, whatever. The patience side of the fishing game has to really take part, and you really have to kind of exercise some areas, because sometimes these areas will not light up straight away for you, whether it be in a major or a minor, in and around that time frame. Sometimes you have to kind of wait it out. You have to see what the fish are going to do, see what they're dictating to you. Pay attention to what the bait size is, what the flavor of the bait is. Those are all factors that go into it. And then once you catch a fish or two, then just kind of hunker down right there and just and see what else that they may want, especially if you got multiple people. If you're fishing by yourself, yeah, you're going to want to fish a particular bait for a little bit longer than you normally would, not just trade them out every 15 or 20 minutes. Stick with it for 45 minutes to an hour. If you're not getting anything on that, okay, switch it up. One of the things I like to talk about is when they're in and around a full moon, you got to downsize that profile of that particular bait, because these fish are predominantly night feeders, and that's when their main feeding time is going to be, is during the dark hours. So when you're coming off that time frame, you got to make sure that you give them something just a tad bit smaller, that they want to be, try to entice them to want to eat that as they're heading toward a mid-morning or midday, because those time frames later in the day become slower and slower bite frames, and you have to wait for that moon to come back up. Again, we're heading into transition days now. We're coming off the backside of a full moon, so that's another thing. What I just mentioned a few minutes ago in the other video is that you have to make sure that you have different size and different things to throw at them during this time frame, because again, you can have all different kinds of bites. You can have good, great, bad, poor, terrible, average, above average, below average, whatever. All of the above have been good, or what you would have to contend with. So the down south in the Big Papa Pearl has been very good. Copperfield, that's a new bait that was also dropped at the boat show by Down South, the fishing show by Down South, is another flavor that has been good. I'm not sure if those are available yet in local stores. But you can get them from Down South themselves. The Knock and Tail Rogue has been spectacular in both, in the new flavor of the Rogue, yes. Heavy Metal, Greenback, all of those flavors have been very solid for us. Again, bigger moon, so we've been throwing a lot of burner shads in the Big Papa, Twisted Tea, Purple Rain, White Ice. All those flavors have been very good for us. Also Mud Minnow, Acid Rain, Firecracker. Other flavors as well in the mud or the burner shads, and then of course the Marker 54 jerk shrimp, free lining that thing, just bouncing out along a grass line edge, has produced fairly well as well. Again, these particular areas during these time frames is just stuff that you're going to maybe have to explore a little bit, get yourself out of the boat and get back into some of these areas, and you'll locate some fish. St. Charles Bay, around the point, back here to Cow Chip, all the way back around as you head up toward Big and Little Sharp. Now, one thing that you must be aware of, with our water temps being where they are, in the mid to upper 70s and low 80s, the alligators are back out in St. Charles. I've already seen 2 or 3 cruising some of the areas just a little offshore, as far, maybe 100 yards out. You can see them kind of hanging out there. So if you're going to wade in St. Charles, make sure that you are aware that these cats are starting to cruise back out in the water. And that's something that needs to go into your game plan. And if you're going to wade St. Charles area, you may want to have your head on a little bit more of a swivel. So make sure that you're looking around. So that said, all the way in the back in the very back of St. Charles, they got those back lake mouths that drop out out in the back end of it. The shoreline against the north end of it, headed back toward the west side of St. Charles, has been pretty good. There's a decent amount of grass that's working back there, but again, this was, we weren't worried about the gators at the time, so that's something that's going to kind of factor in if you're going to fish back in that area. But there has been fish holding back in there. There's been some nice redfish, some scattered trout, nothing great on the trout side, 15 to 17 inch, maybe an occasional 18 or 19 scattered in there, but the redfish have all been, 22 to 24. They've been very nice, solid fish. In and amongst bait, again, it's always an important factor. You must locate and find your bait working in these areas. Nothing happening there. Get on the east shoreline and work all those areas back in there. Again, gators are cruising around back in these areas, so just make sure you take that into account when you go fish this area. Egg Point, all the way back down in there to Boy Scout Camp, another great area. There's been tremendous amount of bait working on those shorelines. There's been scattered trout up and down in and amongst that bait. There's been some scattered redfish here and there on that. You can get over in Cavazzo and work both sides. We've had some big winds, no winds, a little bit of wind, kind of everywhere. So you have an option to fish either side in Cavazzo. Typically, I like to fish more the north side of it, especially with the south or southeast breeze, or even the east and east breeze that pushes down it. But the other side, on the west side of it, is just as good, and you have opportunity over there as well. And again, there's scattered grass in there. You've got all different types of structure as far as shell goes, great bait. You just have to get out and work it. Again, it's just a terrific area that's going to hold fish at given points in time. So, and you can find some protection, especially if you got one of those days where it's got a bunch of wind that's howling down through there. So you can get up there and be protected either on the windward or leeward side of the shoreline, whatever's happening on that particular day that you want to fish. Back down in Cowchip, back lake areas there. Again, you can wade that, but right now I would kind of steer away from the wading areas, especially in that kind of remote little area. You may want to stay out of the boat and just drift it, or use your trolling motor and work the little deeper edges, work the shorelines, and see if you can't cherry pick some redfish that are back in some of these areas as well. Again, majors and minors have been a big deal moving forward. I will continue to stress to you to make sure that is somewhere in your fishing day to locate and find to get these fish to eat. Again, all the baits in play: mirror lures, marker 54s down south, knocking tails. All the flavors that I mentioned earlier are all great flavors to throw back in here. The water's been pretty good as far as color goes. Again, tremendous amount of bait. Be patient with this, especially as we're moving into these transition days. You can locate and find fish. You just have to be patient if that bait and that bite is not happening as fast as what you wish. Third chain of islands, all the way down here to Rattlesnake Reef, all the way down towards Cedar Flat. This whole area, this whole shoreline, all this. There's a tremendous amount of grass that's starting to grow back on these shorelines here. It's splotchy. It's splotchy in some areas. You got a little bit more heavy grass in other areas. But that's one of these things that you really need to pay a close attention to, especially if you've got a little deep water adjacent to where all these grass flats and grass edges are. Whether you're fishing up in this area or you're fishing an area where you like to fish, whatever that is, grass is going to be the key and component here moving forward for the next few weeks. With our water temps starting to be in the upper 70s and low 80s, our air temps are being in the low 80s to mid to upper 80s and maybe creeping close to the 90s. So what's going to happen is this water temp is going to continue to creep up, and what takes place during this time frame, because we're in a full spring mode right now. So these trout, they're going to start moving up on these grass beds and start looking for areas to lay their eggs. And that's part of the process and what they want and like to do. Some little tidbit for you: if you're fishing one of these areas and you start to catch a bunch of male trout in one of these areas, stay patient and work the area thoroughly, because more than likely there is a big female trout that's getting ready to lay her eggs. So the males move in and just wait for her to do that so they can fertilize those eggs. So it's just a little tip that if you do get that opportunity, hang in there. And don't be in such a hurry to try to walk through or move through an area, because you may miss an opportunity to catch a really quality fish up in some of these areas. We have found scattered fish. The trout have been pretty good. Again, nothing great. Scattered redfish up and down the shoreline, we've seen those and have caught some of those. The main baits that we've been using during these time frame, coming off the full moon, we're on the backside of it, and we're headed into those transition days over these next few days. So, again, talking about making sure you have different baits in your box that you can throw different profile sizes and lengths and just different colors, and because the water temps and color is going to be all over the place depending on where you're at. The biggest flavors that we've been throwing the down south and the Big Papa Pearl, Twisted Tea, Copperfield have been probably the most productive for us from their standpoint. And then, of course, in the burner shad, the white ice, Purple Rain, Twisted Tea is that as well. Again, and of course, more in your clear, because we found a lot of clear water up in here that's been very clean. So the Firecracker, Acid Rain, Mud Minnow, all those have been very good flavors to throw as well. Of course, in your knock and tail, your greenbacks, the Rogue flavor, and Heavy Metal have all been quality baits to throw as far as color selection. And then, of course, if you get on one of these grass line edges and shores where you've got lots of grass in there and you can see the potholes, tie on one of those Marker 54 jerk shrimps and free line that thing in those potholes. You will be pleasantly surprised how productive that bait can be. Just about everything, as far as I know, everything in the bay system eats shrimp. So, and you get a nice little shrimp in there, it's got some action to it, and it's really lively in there in those potholes, you're going to get those reaction strikes, and it's going to be exactly what you want it to be. So if you don't have any of those in the box, just get you a package of them and throw them in there. And, you get tired of throwing a plastic, or if you get tired of throwing a topwater, and topwater, by the way, has been pretty good as well over the last few days. We've been lots of topwater action, lots of blow-ups, lots of swirls, lots of takes, just a lot of good action. It's a lot of fun. If you're a topwater enthusiast, get them out and start chunking them, because we're getting great results with those as well. Again, majors and minors has been main keys of points for us to work in and around these areas to locate and find fish. So, again, once you locate an area and you got a major or minor coming up, just be patient with it and really work it. Locate what your bait's doing, and you're going to find your fish.